I'm going to be following on, thinking about the connection between psychology and religion, in particular a story about the fall in the Old Testament of the Bible. It's mentioned in Genesis, and it might be a story that you're less familiar with, but I'll put the references up for people who are interested. It's all to do with this person, Enoch, who was the great-great-grandfather, I think, of Noah in the mythical story. And he was someone he was one of the prophets that didn't die. I think there's only two prophets that didn't die but just got transported up to heaven in the Bible. One of them, I think, was Ezekiel, was it? The one that went on chariots, was taken up on a big chariot into heaven. And then the other was Enoch. And in the Kabbalic religion, Kabbalah, which is like a mystical wing of Judaism, they have him as the archangel Metatron. He became Metatron. And so as Metatron, one might suppose, he was in the council, the divine council, with Yahweh, who was one of the sons of God, but the kind of head son of God. And all the angels are referred to as sons of God. And there were these angels who wanted to have a little bit of real estate, let's say. So they weren't on team, project humanity. They were a little bit jealous, and they wanted earth because the earth had been created for human beings to have stewardship over and to enjoy and all of this, and they wanted a bit for themselves. And so they rebelled in that they went down to earth and thought their only way to get what they wanted and to get some of that for themselves would be to mate with humans. So that's what they did, and they were called the Nephilim. You might have heard of the Nephilim, or the Watchers, which I find fascinating to think, why would they be called the Watchers? It's a bit creepy. It actually reminds you that they're angels. The L at the end of names is a powerful angel, like you have Michael, these archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, they are they're the top angels. And you have somebody called Azazel, who must have been very powerful, and he was one that fell and led the rebellion. I think there were 333. Why did I get that number that came down to earth? And then some of them must have returned, because there was only another 199 with him, 200 that stayed, that were actually thrown out of heaven because of their rebellion and because of what they did, because they mated with humans, and they were consigned to a pit. They wanted to get back. Is that right? Wait a minute, I might get the story wrong. They wanted to come back. They decided that can you ask if we can come back into heaven? And it was Enoch that had the job of going to tell them, no, you're not allowed back in. You have to stay here until the end of days. And they were consigned to a pit, like underneath the ground, with all these rocks and boulders put on top of it, presumably to just symbolically represent the underworld, the dark stuff that's underground. Or also perhaps the fact that they were not seen, that they're unconscious. And this is the link with the unconscious aspect of the psyche, the stuff that's in the shadow, the stuff that's hidden, but that's powerful and can control us. You don't mess with the unconscious, and we're being driven by the unconscious. You have thoughts. Where did that thought come from? Especially if it's an invasive thought, that's maybe one that's an impure thought, or that it's a harmful thought that's going to tell you to do bad things or hurt yourself or whatever. Where did that come from? Why am I thinking those thoughts? These thoughts are not my own. Well, maybe there's something in that. Maybe that myth, that story of Azazel and his, clan, all of them down there that are just needing to get their energy somehow. In fact, that's really interesting, actually, this thought that just came to me, that the only way they are able to have experience is through the human incarnational experience, because human beings have bodies, and can experience, because they are disembodied, they are in the invisible realm. The only way they'll have experiences on earth is through humans in agreement with them. And of course you might say, well, who would agree to work with a dark angel? Some people do. Some people willfully, consciously do that. They invoke angels. And this is with the dark arts, the dark magic, the occult. And they do it because it works. You can actually, these angels are powerful. If you work with angels, they'll offer you all kinds of things. They'll say, well, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. I want that job, you want that relationship, you want that revenge over that person, you want money, power, influence. I can give you all of that because I'm in control. I manage these whole systems. This matrix is a consciousness grid, and we are controlling that consciousness grid. We have the power to do that. And as human beings, you see, we're plugged into that matrix. We're plugged into two matrices, if you think about it. We're plugged into the infinite being, which we're never disconnected from. So that we can never be unplugged from that, because it's our true nature, our true eternal nature. We're made in the image of God. We're imagers. And angels, by the way, are also imagers of God because they have free will. But they chose to rebel, to be in rebellion with that free will. And of course now they're consigned. According to this story, they're consigned to the pit, to Sheol, as it's called, or hell, the underworld, until the end of time, the end of this eon maybe. Because an aeon is actually a time. We think of aeon as being a time, don't we? A period of time, a measurement of time. But aeons are also a vibrational frequency. Aeons also refer to like a level of consciousness. So they can't break out and get back into heaven because they were refused it. So they have to make their home. They have their power only in this level of consciousness, which is the one that is the default mode of consciousness for human experience. Doesn't have to be, because we're also plugged into the divine, and we can transcend the human default consciousness. But that human default consciousness is controlled by the fallen angels, the archons, in the Pistis Sophia story, which is another myth that tells the truth of what's going on in its own way. I find this fascinating, don't you? The fact that they're called the Watchers, and the fact that you've got the eye, symbol of the eye in the occult practices, and also on the dollar note, isn't it? It's on the dollar notes, the Illuminati. Who's in charge? Who's controlling all of that? The institution, the banking system, who are they? The Watchers. And this is how it's corrupted. It's not people, you see. I think this is where people get mistaken sometimes. It's not people that are consciously doing this. Maybe it is, maybe some of them are, maybe there are people who are willfully engaging in the dark arts, I don't know. But the power of it, and the fact that it's endemic, and the fact that the world is getting worse and worse and worse, is because people are just lured in by all the shiny things that being in collusion with the fallen angels gives you: power, success, influence, wealth, fame. You just have to think back to the story of Jesus in the desert, and the enemy going to him, Satan. You say, oh, it's Satan that talked to him. Well, actually, Satan isn't an entity, just one entity, just one being, because it's in the Bible. It's actually the Satan. If you look at the grammatical, the actual word in Hebrew, the Satan, meaning the opponent, the enemy, the adversary. And so it's a metaphor, really, but people do say, you use a certain name for it, but it doesn't matter. You don't need to name the angels. You don't give them time of day. You don't give them power by naming them. But knowing what they're up to, knowing the tricks, helps you to just think, I'm not subscribing to that. I'm unsubscribing to the default setting. You know, like like you buy a phone or any sort of gadget, and it's got default settings already programmed in, and then you can go into the settings and you can just adjust it, customize it. So that's something that the dog's just walked in. That's something that you can do, and this same idea applies to consciousness. There is a default setting that you just inherited by means of being born in the flesh, by means of ancestral lineage, but also just being soaking up the collective consciousness, because your mind isn't your own. Your mind isn't hermetically sealed. You don't have your own thought. You think your thoughts are your own, but it just doesn't work that way. It's porous, and it's just picking up all the time on what's in the collective, just as your thoughts feed the collective. And it's, how are you using your thoughts? Are you feeding the fallen angels? Or are you choosing the good and feeding the higher evolution? Are you plugged in and being energized by the infinite being that you truly are, that you're never disconnected from? But your consciousness and how you use it is what will determine the kind of life you have, what shows up in your life, how happy you are, and also how you're serving the world. Thought just came to mind then, that Jungian quote again about, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. It's just the archons, just the fallen angels playing with you. But as soon as you know that that's the game, that's what they're up to, you can unsubscribe from it. You can change the settings. There's a passage in the Bible, I forget where it is, I'll put the link when I find it, but talks about the renewing of the mind and about not giving into the wiles of the human lower nature, which is ruled over by the powers and principalities of this dark age. That's where that's coming from. Also talks about metanoia, which is going beyond the human consciousness into the mind beyond. So we're talking again about the aeons and about the levels of consciousness going higher, more expansive, not being locked into the matrix conditioning. I love finding these links and these connections that are between the religious mythic language and the psychology when we talk about the unconscious. It's just talking about the same thing. There's only one truth. Whatever language we use for it. And maybe the answer is, to become multilingual. You think, this is the way the Christians talk about it. And some people might say, well, I don't talk that language. I don't believe any of that. And it just leaves you feeling cold. But you're happy to listen to the psychologist talking about consciousness and talking about projection and neuroses and invasive thoughts and so on. And if we're able to just use these different language ways of talking, we could be talking mythic one minute, we could be talking metaphysics the next minute, and philosophy, and then we could be talking psychology the next minute, and we can just be multilingual, and it doesn't matter what language we use, because there is common ground. We know that we're not trying to prove this is right and you're wrong, as it used to be. We used to divide and rule. That's what they want us to do, isn't it? You think about it. I love it when we just argue between ourselves, who's right and who's wrong. But if we get the upper hand when we are united in a common cause, which is to overcome these dark energies that are destructive. As Jesus said, they just, you know, they're thieves. The thief comes in to steal, kill, and destroy. And these forces are always destructive and cause chaos. And that's what we're seeing more of in our world. People are waking up to what's really happening, no matter which story you listen to, whichever way in, whether your way in is from philosophy, from Christianity, or from psychology, doesn't matter. Or spirituality, Eastern spirituality, non-duality, whatever, Buddhism. You know, we're all talking about the same stuff. There's only one reality, there's only one truth. And by reconnecting to that truth, we can come home and we can help each other, walk each other home. As always, if anything has resonated with you, please subscribe, please like, please share, please comment, because what I'd really like to do is just create a conversation around all this, get talking about it all, because it's exciting, and now is the time. Never been a better time to be having these kind of conversations. So thanks for watching, take care, all my love, bye for now, stay connected.